Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 95. 95 is a good number, and that means I am 5 weeks out from the big 100 episodes of the Writer's Journey. I cannot wait. So I hope everybody had a great Christmas, and I hope everybody had a great New Year's. It is now, January 2nd as this episode goes live. Who knew we would be in 2020 so fast? We are officially, finally in 2020, which I think is going to be a good year for me and a good year for all of you listening. And so I hope that you've made some headway and laid a good ground game so that you can hit the ground running in these first days of January. And so that is certainly what I have done. And just update-wise, there's really not a whole lot to update you on other than I'm making progress in Cold Hard Magic, and I had some revelations with that I wanted to talk about for the balance of the episode today after I get through the rest of these updates. So I'll punt that for now. But the second thing in terms of updates is that I've really just been trying to unwind these past couple weeks. This has been, like I said, a great year for me. I have done a lot. I didn't quite write as many books as I wanted to write, but I still got a lot accomplished. And so I really focused on spending time with my family and did some much needed unwinding by watching a lot of YouTube videos. So whatever it is, I hope you guys did some good unwinding too. And I actually had a revelation that I wanted to talk about today that I had from my personal life. So one of the big challenges in my house is keeping the house clean. I have a 5-year-old. I have a rabbit, and I have a puppy, and it is impossible sometimes to keep our house clean. Puppy sometimes will track in stuff from the backyard or stuff when we're taking her on a walk. Our rabbit has a litter, and sometimes she just likes to stomp and go crazy in the litter. And my daughter is in this phase right now where she likes to eat Rice Krispies without milk, and so we'll give her a bowl of Rice Krispies, and like 90% of them will end up on the floor, along with toys, along with all the other stuff that she plays with on a regular basis. It's just crazy, and so my wife has just been going kind of crazy about our house, and we try to keep it clean. And so what I did for Christmas was I got her a robovac. So it's one of those little cheap, giant glorified hockey pucks, and at midnight every night the thing comes alive and it cleans my house, and it is awesome. Absolutely awesome. I would highly recommend it if you are looking for something, some automated way to keep your house clean. And so I got her the robovac, and of course it's my job to set it up and make sure it runs on time and make sure it cleans up everything every day. So that was my gift to my wife for Christmas, is the gift of a cleaner house. And so I'm putting it together, and the first couple times you use it, you have to follow it around because sometimes the robovacs can get stuck on stuff, right? So like there's certain things that it doesn't like there are certain rugs in my house that it doesn't do very well with. It doesn't seem to like the vents on the floor. And there's just other things like you have to make sure all the chairs are picked up and all that. So anyway, the reason I tell you this story was because last week I spent some time talking about automation and how automation, I think, is critically important before you ever get to the point where you outsource something, right? So it doesn't make any sense to pay a VA to do something that you should have already optimized in your business. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking about a lot in 2020. Optimize, automate, and then outsource. And so as I was following this robovac around, I thought, wow, this is really a great example of automating and outsourcing, right? So a lot of people, when they automate things, they think, oh gosh, I'm going to automate this and I'm never going to have to do it again, right? I'm just going to give, I'm going to run this script and I'm never going to have to do my royalties again, or I'm going to hire this VA and I'm going to have them outsource or work on all these things that I don't have time for. And I just want to be able to walk away from it. right? I think a lot of people have those thoughts. They just want to be able to hand something off to someone and then walk away, especially authors. And I am here to tell you that that is the wrong way to think about it. You can't just hand something off 100%, right? That's where leadership comes in. When you outsource something, you are outsourcing it maybe 80, 85%, maybe 90%, right? But in that 10%, it's still going to need your attention. So in many cases with my house, I literally have automated vacuuming of my house. Like I literally have done that. That is something that took me probably an hour, maybe hour and a half, depending on if it was really dirty on the weekends, to vacuum my entire house. Now I don't have to spend very much time at it at all, but I still have to spend time vacuuming, right? So I have to prep before the little robobot goes around. I have to make sure the dining room chairs are on the floor. I have to make sure that all of the trouble spots are blocked off so that the bot won't go over them and get stuck while we're asleep, right? And I still have to supervise it from time to time to make sure that it doesn't run into any trouble. So my time spend was reduced, but it wasn't reduced by 100%. It was reduced by like 90%, right? And it's the 10% where I have to get involved and make sure that things continue to run smoothly on a regular basis. That's how I want you to think about automating and outsourcing, right? Don't just give something away, right? You still have to supervise it. You still have to lead it. And so I just thought, as I was following this little guy around, I just thought that this is such a great metaphor for outsourcing and automating your business, particularly the writing business, because writers are prone to getting screwed and getting embezzled, because we don't tend to be money people, right? And so we just have to be careful about the things that we give away, especially if we're giving away access to any passwords, things like that. Just remember, you still have to be involved. So that was a little thought I had, but I wanted to talk about cold hard magic. So I mentioned over the past few weeks that I have been working on book 2 of my Good Necromancer series, Cold Hard Magic. And I started it on about the 15th of December, and I wanted to finish it in about a month. And I haven't missed a single day since I've started. So I've made momentum every single day, but I've been falling short of the word count goals that I wanted to hit. And so I thought this would be a really good opportunity to talk about that, because I like to set pretty aggressive goals. And I will say that 8 times out of 10, when I set goals for my novels, I almost always hit them. In fact, I almost always exceed them. So in most cases, if I had said, I want to finish a novel by January 15th, I would be done on the 10th or I'd be done on the 5th. It just magically works that way. This is one of those 2 out of 10 times where it's not going that way. In fact, the novel is progressing slower than I would like for it to progress. And so I wanted to talk about how I'm handling that, because this is definitely... This novel is definitely in the bottom 10% of all novels I've written in terms of how long it's taken me to write it, right? So I think my Galaxy Maverick series, book 1 and book 4, those were some of the ones where the production times, they just seems like they just crawled along. This is definitely along with those. And I wanted to talk about some things that I've done over the past week that have helped me reconnect with my progress and my inspiration, and just some learnings and revelations that I have had to relearn while going over this, because it's really, really easy to forget the perspective and context when you're writing a novel, because the only thing you can think about when you're writing is the writing. And when that's not happening, or when it's not going as easy or smooth as you want it to go, you start to have some doubts, and you can start to listen to that critical voice a little bit. And so one of the things that I've always said in my career, and that I've always said on my YouTube channel, and in some respects on this channel, not as much, or on this podcast, is to trust the process, right? So as writers, we don't always get to choose what words end up on the page, but when we write out of faith in knowing that the words that we put down are ultimately the right words. Right? And if they're not the right words, we have to have faith that we can edit those words into something that will be right. Right? That's just, I don't know, gospel talk for writers, but we have to trust the process. And I tell myself that all the time, and even I forget sometimes about trusting the process. So the reason I say that is because this particular novel, it's interesting how I'm starting off. The narrative technique is a little bit different. Like I'm doing some things differently with this, and I talked a little bit about that in the last episode. But essentially, I'm having the villain meet the hero at the very beginning of the story, and the villain's plans are laid out at the very beginning of the story for the most part. That's a little unusual. Usually, the hero has to figure out what the villain's plans are, but I'm having this villain lay them all out on the table. There's a very specific reason I'm having her do that, so I won't spoil that. But that's created some issues for me because, okay, I've just said everything that the villain is going to do. I've had her show the reader everything she's going to do. Now what? And it's been a little bit of a challenge, and so I've tried to write 1,500 words a day. I've ended up doing about 500 to 1,000. Now, the words I've written have been good, though. And so the first part I talk about in trusting the process, I've had to constantly tell myself, okay, yes, this isn't moving as quickly as I'd like for it to move, but what I have on the page is pretty good. At least I think it's pretty good, according to my standards, right? Readers will ultimately judge that. But from what I've written in the past, compared to now, I think this is pretty good. And so being patient, I think, is the next thing that I've had to constantly tell myself, right? So I'm behind about 9,000 words. Like as of today, I should be at about 28,000 words. And I'm only around maybe 20. Right, so maybe that's not 9,000, but it's a little bit less. I'm behind, and so I'm probably not going to hit my deadline. Now, this deadline is arbitrary; it's not the end of the world. But I like to hit my deadline so I can move on to the next thing. And so the next thing that I've had to tell myself, and that I've been religious about every single day, even though I haven't been hitting my quotas, is don't miss a day, no matter what. Don't go to bed until you've gotten words down for this story, even if the rest of the day is kind of chaotic. And even if it's just 100 words, it doesn't matter. Keep the momentum, because if I can keep that momentum, my minimum every day, I'm trying to hit at least 1,000 words every day. And if I hit that minimum, I'll continue on, and it's inevitable that I'll finish the book by like January 20th, right? So I might be a couple of days late, but I'll still finish the book within a reasonable time frame. Not missing, I think, is super, super important because it keeps me on my streak. And I talk all the time about the law of averages, right? So if you look at 30 days of production of writing a novel, you're going to have, I don't know, I'm not giving any scientific math here, but probably 10% of those days are going to be super rock star days, right? Where if you have 1,000 word minimum, you're going to hit 2,000 or you're going to hit 3,000 and you're going to go to bed feeling jazzed up, right? Another 10% is going to be where you maybe didn't get any words written, or you wrote 100 words, or you wrote 200 words, or you fell significantly below what your quota was for the day. And then 80% of your word count days are going to be where you're right at or right above or maybe just a little bit below your daily word count quota, right? And so if you look at the law of averages, if you make sure that you sit down and hit your quota every single day, or at least make a really good attempt at it, the law of averages will work in your favor, right? And if you hit that minimum every day, then you'll eventually finish it. It feels long, it feels lengthy, but you'll finish it. So that's something that I've had to continuously tell myself and make sure that I'm bending over backwards to do. And then the next thing is that, and someone asked me this on my YouTube channel, and I thought it was a very insightful question. And they were talking about how some parts of novels feel tougher than others. And I think that that's absolutely true. There are some parts of every novel that are more difficult to get through than anything else. And so what I found is I've learned to recognize when I'm in a tough spot. And I can usually tell when I'm in a tough spot when I can't immediately see what will come next. Like usually when I'm riding into the dark, I can see the next scene. Like I usually always know what the next scene will be most of the time. But when I can't see that next scene and then I get to the end of the current scene that I'm on and I don't know what's going to happen next, that's what I would call a tough spot, right? That's a tough spot. And so I've recognized when I'm at those tough spots, I've learned to try to move through those quickly. Now, it doesn't mean writing sloppy, but it just means 9 times out of 10, when I go back to edit the tough spots, they're usually fine. There's usually not anything structurally wrong with it. There might be some typos. There might be some additional sensory details I need to put in, but usually they're fine. And so I just have to trust that and then know that I need to move through this as quickly as I possibly can until I can get to a point where I can see the next scene again. So that has been something that I've been thinking about regularly, because there was a portion from about the 5% mark of the novel after the first scene all the way up until about the 20% mark where I just could not see what was happening. And it was really frustrating because that usually never happens to me at the beginning of the book. And then also not writing sloppy. I mentioned that. I think that's incredibly important. I'm not writing sloppy. I'm making sure that every 500 words to 1,000 words, I'm going back and I'm looping through what I just wrote to make sure I'm cleaning it up and make sure that it looks good, so that I don't have to worry about cleaning up things and doing multiple drafts of the book. I think that's incredibly important. And another thing I have to keep telling myself throughout this is that I know that this is not the last novel that I'm going to write. This is not the last novel that I'm going to write. In fact, I'm going to write a hell of a lot more novels after this. And so this is just an anomaly. This is just the law of averages bearing itself out. Out of 10 novels, there's going to be one novel that you write really, really fast. There's going to be another novel that you write really, really slow. Everything else is probably going to be in the middle. Right? And so this is just that 1 in 10, right? And so I'm not terribly worried about it because I'm probably still going to finish it within a reasonable amount of time. And so you just have to take the long perspective. And then lastly, I'm just trying to still enjoy the process and have fun, and that's really, really hard. And like I said, I know all this stuff. I teach it. I teach it on a regular basis, but it's amazing how quickly you can forget all of this stuff. And even I need reminding that I should enjoy the process and have fun. And I've been having a blast with this novel. Like it's moving along like a tortoise, but I'm still having a blast with it. I'm trusting the process and I'm having fun. And the way I've always thought about it is that I've actually done the timing of how long it takes me to write a novel. Like for a period of about 3 novels, every time I sat down to write a novel, I would turn on a timer. And then when I stopped writing, I would turn the timer off. And every time I sat down to write, I would turn the timer on. And what I ended up with was a time aspect of exactly how long it took me to write a novel. And on average, it takes me about 40 hours. If you actually add up all of the time that it takes me to spend. Some of my novels lately have been less than that, but 40 is about the average when you consider editing, when you consider some of the other things that you have to do with formatting and all that. So 40 hours, right? That is about 1 work week, right? 40 hours, 1 work week. So if you think about it like that, this novel will probably take up a month of my life, right? Or about 40 hours of work time, which that's infinitesimal if you really, really think about how many work weeks you'll work in your life. So I did the math from age 15 to age 65. That's about 2,600 work weeks, right? This novel is going to take me 1 of those work weeks, right? And I did the math on that. That's about 0.0000368% of all the working weeks in my entire life. And that's not even counting the time that I spent on my full-time job, right? This is outside of my full-time job. So if I truly worked 80 hours a week on my writing, plus the 40 hours I work on my, or 40 hours a week on my writing, plus the 40 that I work in my work week, it would actually be double that. And it would even be less, right? So if I ever become a full-time writer, that's really good perspective when you're thinking about failures or struggles in your life in terms of how long it's taking you to do something. So anyway, like I said, that's what I wanted to talk about this week. As we move into the new year, I know that some of you listening are probably getting ready to work on a novel, or maybe you're working on one, and I found that you just always need those constant reminders. I've written 50 books, and I'm extremely confident when I sit down to the page. I usually don't have any problems getting my words down, and if I do have problems getting the words down, I don't have any problem sitting down and trying. But sometimes it can be a challenge sometimes, and so if anything, it's just some perspective that I'd like to pass on, because writing a novel novels are like children, right? Everyone is going to be a little bit different, and you just have to trust the process, enjoy it, and know that at the end of the process, you're going to be there, and you're going to be exactly where you want to be, and where you are is exactly where you're meant to be. So with that, I hope everybody has a great week, and your 2020 is off to a great start, and I will holler at you next week. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.